Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. God Holds Me in His Arms, Raine's Journey. It's the name of the new encouraging book by Raine Miller. And I'm really happy that Raine is with me right now here at the show. We're going to talk all about this. Raine, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's my pleasure to have you here, and I'm excited to learn all about God Holds Me in His Arms. Can you tell me about this, Raine?
This is a book that has encompassed different journeys throughout my life. For as long as I can remember, I've kept a journal, something to write in. I'm a writer. I'm a reader. I have a whole library in one. I should be a library, but one of my rooms is really a library. So as long as I can remember, I've always journaled, I've always written things, I've already read things, and so many folks were telling me so long, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. So this was my push to just finally write the book. So I've always had something written down, but I went ahead and pushed myself far beyond and just wrote the book. So that's what it's about, the journey of my life.
Fantastic. What sparked you to sit down and get started on this? Because it's the journey of your life. I'm sure you're a little bit vulnerable here. You're opening up a little bit. So was that hard for you to get started?
It really was, because there's some things you want to hold back because you don't really want everybody to know how much you've actually gone through. And that's why I have a dilemma, because some things are very, very personal in there. But I think that just me allowing other people to know in case they've gone through it, because so many people always tell me that I've encouraged them. I've always been a listener for folks. I'm a life coach. I'm a minister. I'm a teacher. And I've always listened. When people that know me personally say so many times that if you just wrote something, you might be able to help someone that you just don't reach other than us. So that's what pushed me, because this long time, everybody's always saying, you encourage me. Your strength is far past anything I've ever seen. So just my story, if it's helped someone else along the way, know that they can too make it out, and God really does hold you in his arms, then that was my purpose for this book.
Raine, who would you say your target readership was for this?
Any and everybody who just needs encouragement and strength to know that they can surpass any kind of obstacle that's thrown at them. I wouldn't say that I'm the only person that's gone through something, but just the way I've dealt with it, I've always tried to hold myself up and pull others up with me who are actually going through the same situations. So my target audience is anybody who's going through difficult times, anybody who's just down and out and feels like nobody cares, that no one listens, or they just don't have anybody to vent or talk to or cry to. That's who my target audience is. But especially since this is a world of chaos and confusion going on, we have so much anger and animosity and people hurting each other. And just, I always take the time to make people smile and just a slight encouragement throughout each person's day. You never know what makes the difference in someone's life if you just encourage them and just tell them it's going to be okay, or it's okay to smile. And I've had so many people tell me, you've made a difference in my day, and you've made me go past, what I didn't think I could do today. So anybody who just needs encouragement, and there's so many different situations with abuse going on. It's overwhelming when you watch the news nowadays, and every time you listen, there's something going on. And this is Domestic Violence Month. So just everything. Anyone who needs encouragement and just know they can make it.
Now, being your first book, Raine, did this take you a really long time to write and put through that publishing process?
With it being such a short book, you wouldn't imagine how long it did take, because I think, like I said, my dilemma was, what should I include? What can I include? I don't want it to be an overwhelming read, but I want it to be straight to the point, and people could say, this was a short book, but it's a quick read, and it has important things that I can pull from it for my life. So it did take me a long time. I would say it took me a number of years, because I started, I stopped, I forgot, and then I would come back and visit it again. But that's last year I said, I'm going to do this. This is something I need to do. I'm going to go ahead and get it done. And I actually sat down for months and just was compiling different things of years and years and years of journaling that I did. So I didn't want it to be an overwhelming read. This may touch you, and if it touches you, then you can get through it just like I did.
Again, it's titled God Holds Me in His Arms, Raine's Journey. It's written by Raine Miller. published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, really everywhere. Well, Raine, really appreciate you coming on this show and talking to me about your book. It was really nice talking tonight.
It was my absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful and humble for the experience speaking with you, and I hope you stay well and stay blessed, and thank you for everything that you do.
The audiobook version of Dark Heart, the thrilling mystery novel written by McKenna Boyd, is out now. And we'll be talking all about this. McKenna is right here with me now. McKenna, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. I'm really happy to be talking with you, and I'm happy to learn all about Dark Heart. So can you tell me all about this, McKenna?
Yes, I can. It's about 4 people who are all unknowingly on a journey towards each other. And the lady in it is called Ailish, and she has known one of these people earlier on in her life, and she considered him all this time as the love of her life, but her mother would not let her marry him for various reasons. And she has lived with that and thought about that. And then the other 3 are men who, because she is a singer and she's going to be in a concert, her favorite musician is an Irish pipe player, and he gets involved in her music. And she has other friends that she meets, and she doesn't know that one of them is a very special person to her. Then there's the other one who she can't really figure out too much, but she gets to liking him, and then he just disappears. So that's more or less what's going on, and it goes through the times of the Vietnam War and the troubles in Northern Ireland. I'm Irish. I grew up in a town called Omagh in County Tyrone over there, and it's spelled O-M-A-G-H, and the G-H is silent. I call it a romance, but there's more to it than that, a lot more to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what sorts of readers do you think would love this?
Well, the people that have already bought it and read it, they love it. They're chomping at the bit that I finish the sequel. And I'm having a hard time about that because I've been ill and I don't go out very much and I can't walk too well. But I mean, I can sit and do my writing.
So would you say it's romance or mystery fans who would really be into this?
Yes, the women at my work, whenever I retired, I was at a big VA hospital, military, not in the military hospital, but all military patients that had retired, which was a good help to me in this. These girls would say to me, when I started writing seriously, I had been writing quite a bit on this book, and then I got sick, and I was set aside for a while, and then I came back, and I would say about 2 years I finished it. I read a part of it to my friend, my best friend, and I knew she was the kind of person, if she didn't like it, she was just going to go crazy trying to tell me, how nice it was, and I would know that she was lying. But she said to me, my gosh, she said, what are you going to do with this? And I said, hopefully get it published. I said, but it's a long way to go yet. Oh, she says, for goodness sake, go home tonight and get to the writing. It starts with one of the characters. And she wanted to know immediately, I've got to find out about this guy. And I told her that you can read it. I'll bring you a copy tomorrow.
Is this your first book, McKenna, or have you written before this?
This was my first serious writing. When I was in school, I was always writing stories, even when I was really young. And I'd win prizes and all that kind of thing. But the person who really influenced me very, very much was a cousin. His name is Bernard McClaverty, and he lives in Scotland, but he was from Northern Ireland. And anything he ever wrote, whenever I stayed at my grandmother's a lot of the time, and he lived with his grandmother too, and he would ask me what I thought about what he was writing, and I could never find fault with it. He was just amazing. And he said, I think that you're a good writer. I think you should try to write a novel. He was very, very nice to me whenever I got published.
I think readers are really going to love this book. Again, the title is Dark Heart. It's written by McKenna Boyd, and it's published by the Audiobook Network, so you can find it at Audible or iTunes, Amazon, really any place you normally pick up your audiobooks. Well, McKenna, it's been great talking with you here today. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's been great talking to you, too. Thank you very much.
Author J.I. has just released a new novel. It's titled Coyote Tales, an adventure fantasy. And Jay is joining me now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about this book. Jay, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Thank you.
And Jay, can you tell me all about Coyote Tales and what the readers can expect here?
Well, it's a fantasy fiction story about a person who encounters a coyote that glows, and it comes to find out that it's the spirit coyote of the Navajos. It sends him on an adventure that eventually sends him and his wife up to the Navajo reservation, and they get involved with another problem or another adventure having to do with an Anasazi cave opening. And the first book closes when they complete that adventure. And then there's a second tale. It's in the second book that goes into two more adventures.
What was your target audience that you had in mind when you were writing this?
Well, just adults. It's an adult story. Got fantasy in it and some spirituality.
Jay, can you tell me where the idea for the book came about? How'd you come up with this idea?
The book just came out of the blue. I got to thinking about Arizona and living in Arizona and that type of thing. And one thing got in front of the next thing. And pretty soon I had a set of characters that lived in a house on a wash that fed into the desert, and it was on its way.
Is this the first time you've written a book, Jay, or have you done this kind of thing before?
I've got about 12 or 15 books that are already finished and done, but they haven't been published, okay?
When it comes to the publishing process, after you hand your manuscript off to your publisher, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
Just trying to keep the information straight between us. At this particular point, I've only had 2 books totally published. One is Coyote Tales, Book 1, and the other is a children's stories, Book 1. A second book is coming on Coyote Tales 2, and 2 more books are coming on the children's tales.
So after all that hard work that you put into your book, finally you get your first copy and you actually get to hold Coyote Tales for the first time. Can you tell me what's going through your head at that moment?
It's a culmination of a long process because I wrote Coyote Tales first in like 2004, something like that. And there's been quite a few since then. So it's a process.
Absolutely. Jay, do you have any advice for the aspiring authors who are listening to us right now?
Well, I know what works for me. I sit down with a pad of paper and I start writing. And when I get done, almost nobody in the world can read it and understand it but me because I wrote it. And then I have to transcribe it and put it in to type it up so I can read it right. But I have to do it longhand. My ideas come so fast that many times you have to put the words down just half of the word. So it's truly a process.
Whenever you think to yourself, Jay, that you're now a published author, you have a lot of books out there, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Well, I don't have a lot of books out there yet. They're coming. Most everything that I've written up until the last couple of short stories are at least 10 years ago, and I've been working on the last one for 10 years.
The title is Coyote Tales, an adventure fantasy. This is written by J.I. and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So, of course, you can find it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Jay, thank you so much again for coming on the show, telling me about your book. I had a really nice time chatting with you tonight.
Thank you for calling. enjoy the stories. That's what I tell everybody. Just let your imagination enjoy the stories like my imagination enjoyed writing them. Thank you.
The new book by Dr. Clara J. Ushman. It's titled The Choice to Exceed Our Christian Education, examines the current and future state of Christian-based schooling. And I get to talk all about this book. The author, Clara, is right here with me. Clara, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to be talking with you, and I'm excited to learn about the choice to exceed our Christian education, Clara. Can you tell me about it?
Well, it wasn't initially a book idea, but it obviously turned into one X number of years ago without giving my age. For my graduate school thesis, I started doing a research project on choices of religion, basically, not so much just Christianity, but where and when, you hit that age of 18, graduating high school, when you go on to college and you have that freedom, where does your religious life go? Usually not something that's really a big deal. Since you're out of the parents' house, you don't want to be involved anymore. Totally understand. I was like that once too. So I was kind of gathering statistics around, how different universities were trying to get people involved, or if they were or if they weren't. Well, my thesis research ended up being the research part of my dissertation for my doctorate degree, and I just expanded on that. And I was asking a lot of questions about where Christianity has come from, how are we repeating it, how are we not repeating it. But most importantly, especially since the pandemic, and there's been a lot less volunteering and a lot less participation as there used to be. So where does that put the church 10 years from now? Where does it put us 50 years from now? And just a lot of thought-provoking questions. And one of my professors really, really loved the dissertation. He said, you might want to consider making this into a book. And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't think it was that interesting, but I guess maybe it is. So that's kind of how it came about.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
I really didn't have a specific target in mind because so far the book has been out on Amazon. It's been out on Barnes & Noble, and just doing book sales at my own church, I was surprised a lot of different age groups were buying it. So I really didn't have anything in particular where it was going to go.
So when it comes to book publishing and everything like that, Clara, have you done this kind of thing before, or is this your first time doing it?
No, this is my first one.
Wow, congratulations. How long did it take once you got started on this?
About a year and a half.
So there's the publishing process. You hand that off to your publisher and you start the editing and all of that stuff. Clara, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process?
Probably the anticipation. The editing part, I really wasn't too worried about because before I even turned it in to, for my doctorate, I'd already had 3 different people read through it. So my editing wasn't that bad. But I guess just the whole process, since I'm new to it, I was kind of okay, what's going to happen next? And, I didn't know how the book was going to do and just kind of the anxiety of it, I guess.
I'm looking at it right now. I love this cover. It's beautiful. Can you tell me how that came together?
I can actually. That was drawn by my sister.
Very nice.
I have the musical talent. She has the artistic talent. So she designed that for me and I used it for the cover.
I could only imagine what you were thinking and feeling whenever you finally got to hold this in your hands, that finished product. It was a real thing.
That was a very proud moment, yes.
What were you thinking? What was that moment like?
Well, just actually holding it and, seeing it in book form and not seeing it in a, PDF or Word document was wow, this is really happening. And then the first time I saw it on the shelf at Barnes & Noble, I just almost had a little tear, that's me. I made it.
When you think about that, your work's out there for the world now. What's the most rewarding thing about that for you?
So far, the most rewarding thing has been some of the feedback that I've been getting, that I asked a lot of really good questions in the book, and I don't really answer too many of them. I kind of leave them as open-ended questions, but that was kind of my idea. I want the reader to think about those things, whether, they don't even have to be Christian, just where is religion going? Where's Christianity going? And just ask themselves, what am I doing to help with this, or what am I not doing?
Well, I think so many readers are going to find this really interesting. Again, the title of the book is The Choice to Exceed Our Christian Education. It's written by Dr. Clara J. Ushman, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing, so really you can find it everywhere like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Clara, it's been truly wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about your work.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
The book I'm looking at right now is said to hold hopes, dreams, and miracles inside its pages. The book's titled The Miracle Guard Dog, and I'm happy to be sitting with the co-authors, Linda Thompson and Mary Hamby, right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Linda, Mary, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you both being here with me tonight.
Well, thank you. We're happy to be here and so excited about the book.
It's very exciting to be talking about it. I'm curious to learn all about it. So can you give me a taste for what The Miracle Guard Dog is all about?
It's about a dog, of course, a teacup pug, and his owner, Virgil. And it's a heartwarming tale of loyalty and care, celebrating the bond between Fancy and Virgil as they face a life-threatening health issue caused by cystic fibrosis. There are 65 roses within the pages of the book for the children to count. When they finish the book, they say, count the roses. The reason it's called 65 roses sometimes is because a little girl who was diagnosed with the disease, someone asked her, well, honey, what is your problem and what did they tell you have? And she said, well, I have 65 roses. And so a lot of times, cystic fibrosis is referred to as 65 roses. And so that's what the book is about. It's a beautiful story.
It sounds like it. What kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
Well, we were talking to the little girls that Mary keeps, her little nieces. Mary, tell them about your little nieces.
We read this book to two of my little nieces, and they listened very well to the book. And when the book was all finished, she looks up and she says, he made it. So it was written, for children of all ages, actually, for adults also. I always, when I was a school counselor, I had students that were like pre-K to the 8th grade. And the book that I started their year with every year was The Little Engine That Could, because I wanted them to learn to focus on finding solutions to roadblocks and struggles that they had instead of focusing on their problems. The Miracle Guard Dog is really just like The Little Engine That Could on steroids.
So how did this come about? How was this idea birthed?
Well, the inspiration for the book, we had gone through many challenging experiences as teachers and school counselors and, in your own personal lives. Mary's sister, Janie, she passed away of COVID. That was a big thing. Mary and I had been friends since the 2nd grade. And we would just sit at Mary's table and talk. And one day, through our sadness and everything, thinking about Janie, we just sit here and we said, Mary, everybody's told us that we should write a book. You hear that a lot. Well, you should write a book. You'll tell them something, you should write a book. So we did. We wrote The Miracle Guard Dog. And this is actually a true story. It's about something that happened one night to Virgil and his guard dog, his little guard dog. She wasn't a service dog or anything. She was a teacup pug. We just decided that we would write the story about it.
Once you got started on this, how long of a journey was this for you, the writing and publishing, everything?
We worked on it approximately 18 months, something like that. The text itself went pretty smoothly and pretty quickly, but it took a long time, for us to get the cover and the illustrations and all the extra stuff that goes with it accomplished. It's been quite a journey, but it's been very exciting.
I could only imagine that moment whenever you finally got your first copy of The Miracle Guard Dog in. You guys got to actually hold this tangible thing finally in your hands. What was going through your heads at that point?
Oh, when I grabbed that book, I thought, it's real. We did it. And it smelled wonderful.
It was much prettier, than we had imagined. You know what I'm saying? It was amazing.
Well, it sounds like readers of all ages are really going to be into this book. And if you're listening right now, I think you should check it out. Again, it's titled The Miracle Guard Dog. It's co-written by Linda Thompson and Mary Hamby and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so of course you can find it everywhere like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Linda, Mary, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight, learning all about the miracle guard dog and what went into that. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Corey. It was great to talk to you. Thank you.
Author Jim Foley's new book delves into controversial and provocative discussions about the deep-seated issues that plague America and the world. The book's titled The Eve of Destruction, The Systematic Destruction of America and Its Values, Tender Topics. And I get to find out more about this book. Jim, the author, is right here with me now. Jim, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you, Corey.
Absolutely. I'm interested in The Eve of Destruction, finding out all about what's in here, Jim. Can you tell me about it?
Well, the book deals with the evil in our country and in our world. The bad, the ugly, and also the good that we can all accomplish if we just make an effort.
What kinds of readers were you writing for, Jim?
I am looking to have everyone because we need to be inclusive. So this book, although controversial, is meant for everyone to read. So my target goal is for every single person to read it and to decide for themselves what is good, bad, or what is evil.
So how did this come about, Jim? What gave you this idea?
Well, I'm a retired police officer. I spent 30 years and I have lived my life seeing, as I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly in our world. But I've never seen it as bad as it is now. And that is what prompted me to sit down and look at all of the issues that we are dealing with, as not only here in our country, but around the world, and the hatred and the violence and the cruelty. To me, it was unimaginable. And that's what prompted me to sit down and try to be open-minded and write these chapters so that everyone could perhaps see it in a different light.
Is this your first time doing this kind of thing, Jim, or have you been published before this?
I have been published before. Mind you, I'm an old-timer. I'm 73 years old, and a couple of years ago, I got my first book, which is called The Bully Pen, which is strictly based on bullying. And I wrote that from personal experiences and seeing things that were happening also around our country. Young people killing themselves for the fact that they were bullied for whatever the reason. And to me, that was unacceptable. So that was my first book, which I am extremely proud of as well as this one. So I have, at my age, I have had 2 books published now in the last 2 years.
That's fantastic. How long did The Eve of Destruction take you, that whole journey, writing, publishing, everything?
Well, let me be very clear with this, because writing this book took me into very dark places, talking about very, very difficult issues. And I had to face my own biases. I had to face my own realities of how I felt about things. And I tried to put all of those things aside and let my readers decide for themselves based on the facts that I presented to them. And it took me approximately 8 months, taking my time and trying to get the right wording and getting the right sentence structure to make it where my readers could interact with what I was saying.
And I can only imagine in that day when you finally got your first copy in, this thing was a real thing finally, you got to hold it in your hands, Jim. What kind of a moment's that like?
It was, I guess the right word is invigorating. It was invigorating to know that my words, my thoughts were appreciated, and that someone in the publishing business felt that my stories, my thoughts were necessary to be out there for everyone to hear and see. And I was invigorated by that.
What are the chances, Jim, we're going to see a third book from you here down the road?
Now, that is a funny thing. I started writing many, many years ago, but I started writing poems. I have approximately 200 or better poems that I've written over the years. That is something that I am looking forward to in the future.
Again, the title is The Eve of Destruction, The Systematic Destruction of America and Its Values, Tender Topics. It's written by Jim Foley, published by Covenant Books, so you can get it everywhere. Head over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores. You can grab this up. Jim, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Corey, thank you so much for having me, and God bless America, and God bless everyone who might read my book.
Walking by Faith with Thanksgiving. It's the name of the new book, written by Brenda Kerlin, and it deals with faith, hope, and resilience. And we're going to talk all about that right now. Brenda is here with me right now. Brenda, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you, Corey.
Absolutely. I'm curious about Walking by Faith with Thanksgiving. So, Brenda, can you tell me about that?
Yes, it's of a story of Pastor Will Holloway and his family. They deal with heartbreaking losses and deep grief. They struggle with the unanswered question of why, and together they move forward, trusting in God and supporting each other.
What sorts of readers do you think would be really into this?
Well, I do believe that it will appeal to Christians who are dealing with grief and looking for comfort. Anyone who enjoys a good read that offers the warmth of family relationships, drama, and hope, they will find it here.
So how did this come about, Brenda? Where'd you get the idea for this?
Well, my husband had gone on a training trip to Iowa, and I accompanied him. And he walked out the door, and I was sitting in the hotel room, and the story just poured into me. His computer was there, so I started writing it down.
How long of a process was this for you once you got started on it, the writing, the publishing, the whole thing?
It was a long process, totally probably 15 years. I started with a good start, and then life interfered. But every time I would sit down and go back to it, the story was still there, and it wasn't a struggle to write, really. It just was a time thing.
When it comes to writing and publishing, is this your first time at it?
It is my first book, yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
It must have been crazy whenever that first one finally came in. You finally got to hold that physical thing that you were working on. What was that like?
I had a great sense of accomplishment because it had taken so long. I was proud that I had done it. Very thankful to God for walking with me through it.
They said the writing process was pretty easy for you, maybe a little long, but it wasn't that much of a challenge. And when it comes to the publishing process, what did you find the most challenging about that?
Well, I self-published, so it took longer than I thought. It took more rewrites, a lot more looking for errors that I'd made and correcting them. After many, many tries, I finally got it.
Well, now you're officially a published author, Brenda. What's the most rewarding thing about that for you?
Well, I'm satisfied to know that I did what God called me to do. It's a good story. I think it's going to provide help for people who are on the grief walk. I think it can make a real difference in people's lives. I have had one person tell me that it changed their life, so that's the real reward for me.
That's wonderful. Have you thought about writing more, Brenda? Maybe a follow-up to Walking by Faith with Thanksgiving, some other sort of book here in the future?
I have actually already begun the sequel to Walking by Faith with Thanksgiving. I really love this family, and I want to know where God takes them next.
So this can be quite the learning experience when you do this kind of thing for the first time. So, Brenda, is there anything you might have learned along the way that you could throw out there as advice for the first-time authors that are listening?
Proofread. Take a ruler, line by line, and really pray about who you're going to go to for the publishing. That was a big decision to make.
I got the book right here. I'm looking at it, and the cover's beautiful, and that might not be something you think about right away when you start writing your book, you know, what it's going to look like. How did that cover come about?
I pictured it in my head, actually. It is very much the picture of where the story starts out in Iowa.
Now, when you were sitting down to write, did you find yourself maybe having a bit of a routine for it, like maybe you write in the morning, maybe you write at night, or do you find yourself maybe writing just as you find that time?
Truly, it was just as I could find the time. Very undisciplined I am.
Well, it sounds like this book is going to inspire a lot of people. Again, the title is Walking by Faith with Thanksgiving. It's written by Brenda Kerlin and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it everywhere, really, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and right down the street at your local bookshop. Brenda, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about this.
You're welcome. Thank you. It is also available as an audiobook. Thank you.
This book explores challenges faced by single women. It's written by Dr. Bernadine C. Johnson, and it's titled A Single Woman's Concerns and Struggles, Reversing the Perception of Exclusion in the Church in the 21st Century and Beyond. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. The author, Bernadine, is right here with me. Bernadine, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Corey. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. I really appreciate you being on the show. And tell me all about a single woman's concerns and struggles. So, Bernadine, can you tell me what readers are in store for here?
Well, it's a lot of facts, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of help. Let's just put it that way. It's a good read. It's a good help book. And hopefully it will help all single women around the world. That's the main thing.
Bernadine, how did this book come about? Where did the idea come from?
Well, I always had a concern for single women because, of course, I was a single woman before I married. And I noticed the struggles that single women go through. And they have a lot of concerns, especially in the church. It's not just about finding a mate. It's about being a whole person who can understand their financial, who can live in society and function in society as well as in the church.
Once you got started on this, Bernadine, was this a long journey for you? Did it take you a while to write and then get published and everything?
This took me 5 years to write because, of course, I was a single parent. Let's say this. I was a single woman, single by choice. Then I married, and then I wound up being separated. Then I wound up being divorced. Then I wound up remarrying again. The only thing that I haven't been is widowed. And so during this time, I had to raise children by myself for a certain period of time. And I went to school. I had a full-time job. I went to school, and I raised the children.
Wow.
So that was a struggle in itself. So that's what led me a lot. And going to church and sitting in church and being looked at or looked down at as though I wanted someone else's husband or I was going there because I love the Lord and I went to praise the Lord. And if I said hi to anyone, I said it may be female, male, young child, it didn't matter because I was in church and church is supposed to be a safe house. So I went through a lot. I've experienced a lot, and that's what led me to write this book.
You said you were speaking to all single women here. Would you say it's Christian single women primarily? Would non-Christians be able to get a lot out of this?
It's single women, period. You may be a Christian, you may not be, but you may want to become a Christian. But you don't know how, you don't know what to do, you don't know what questions to ask. And so this helps you with your self-esteem. It helps you to know who you are, not just in Christ, but who you are as a woman, as a single woman, because that's how women start off, single. They're not born married. The book speaks to the 5 types of single women. There's single by choice, separated, single parent, divorced, and widow women who have and are experiencing concerns and struggles that may lead to perceptions of exclusion in the church and even in the community.
Looking ahead, what are the chances that we're going to see more from you here in the future?
Well, who knows? You never know. You never know. I just have to allow God to lead me to do whatever he feels that I need to do and not just jump to things, but make sure that, first and foremost, that book is helping others. So I do want to hear from others. I want them to look at the book and make sure that they are being heard. I want to make sure the churches are involved and the community is involved, that they just don't look at women coming to church and think that all they want to come for is to meet a man because they have other concerns.
Well, this book is definitely a blessing to single women everywhere. Again, it's titled A Single Woman's Concerns and Struggles, Reversing the Perception of Exclusion in the Church in the 21st Century and Beyond. It's written by Dr. Bernadine C. Johnson and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So it's available everywhere, really, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores.
Yes, yes.
Oh, Bernadine, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate you for inviting me. Thank you.
Author John Henderson's new book, Answering God's Call to Discipleship, Daily Readings for Your Spiritual Growth, It's out now, and we're going to be talking all about it. John is here with me at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. John, you've written a lot here on answering God's call to discipleship. You got a lot to say. Can you tell me about it? What are readers going to find?
Well, in actual point of fact, this book was meant from the inception to be a resource for a person to experience the kind of personal spiritual growth into the commitment of discipleship that Jesus talks about in all of the red letters of the Gospels. And then Paul expands upon that, talking about the transformed spirituality of believers. This is designed to, in little bites, day by day, there's only one page per day. It is separate for each day of the year. And it's just some thoughts concerning spiritual growth into discipleship, the transformation of each of us, and how we can work toward that with the Holy Spirit actually doing the changing, and how we can help others through compassion and to do the same thing.
It's interesting. When it comes to discipleship, that seems to be a place that a lot of churches are lacking anymore. I think this is really needed.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because as a Bible scholar, which I am, and I've studied and taught Bible for a long time in churches, not in seminaries. But what happened was discipleship and discipling was the main thrust of Jesus's work in the 3 years of his active ministry. But it's interesting to me, and I think your audience may be interested in this. They may not have thought of it. In the Gospels, disciple and discipleship are mentioned approximately 200 times.
Oh, wow.
But then when you get to the middle of Acts, about the time of the stoning and martyrdom of the first martyr, Stephen, from then on through the rest of the whole New Testament, disciple and discipleship does not appear again. Not only that, but in the early church, because of persecution, the discipleship that Jesus emphasized by name kind of passed away. And then the churches around 300 AD to 400 AD, the church organized into an organization. And for 2,000 years, the words and the concept of this personal spiritual growth into discipleship that meant so much to Jesus just kind of disappeared, as you point out, until lately.
Is there a specific reading audience that you had in mind, John?
Well, in actual point of fact, I was very careful not to try to write it as an academic theologian. What I wanted to write is an every person who longs for a better, more spiritualized life, or is hungering and thirsting like how is described by Jesus in the Beatitudes, a person who wants to progress in that sort of light. This book is designed to be of help, a resource.
And there are a lot of these kind of books, a lot of the daily reading, the devotionals and things like that, John. How is this one different than the rest? I can sense there's a big one.
This one is not a daily devotional. It's more like 1 or 2 minute little sermons on one point, or thoughts on one point. The scriptures that support what's being talked about or augment what's being talked about is set out at the bottom of the page. It's more like learning on a small bite-sized daily basis rather than devotionalizing daily as a discipline.
Again, it's titled Answering God's Call to Discipleship, Daily Readings for Your Spiritual Growth. It's written by John Henderson and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can really get it anywhere, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. John, thank you again for joining me and telling me all about this book. I had a really nice time chatting tonight.
Well, I had a great time chatting with you too, and I appreciate all of the support and encouragement that I have gotten, and I really am humbled by it.
Jessica Estrada-Palma has just released a new book. It's a spiritual lesson about turning over one's life to God. It's titled The Pop Bead Story. And we're going to talk all about it. Jessica, the author, is sitting right here with me now. Jessica, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you.
I'm really curious about the Pop Bead Story, what readers are going to find here, Jessica. Can you tell me all about it?
Well, it's about a young girl that was asked by her father to give away her most cherished possession. It's a necklace that she made from plastic beads that she bought with her own money. She was very proud of this pop bead necklace, and she did not want to give it up. She then discovers a valuable lesson about faith and learning to trust in God's greater plans in this family experience.
And what kinds of readers did you have in mind for this, Jessica?
Well, I was thinking a children's book, which is how it's being presented now, because it is about a young girl, and messages like this are very important. And it just seems like the younger you are when you learn things about life, really, the better off you are. I didn't hear this story till I was about 30, I think. It really had an impact on me. So I think actually it's a good message, really, for people of any age, teenagers, young adults. It is written as a children's book, but I think the message really works for everybody.
When it comes to writing, publishing, and everything like that, Jessica, is this your first time, or have you done this kind of thing before?
I have not. This is my first time. I never planned on writing a book. It kind of just happened organically. When I heard this story, and it had an impact on me, and I found myself telling the story to different people that I met, people that I knew, family members. And a lot of people really liked the story. I got a lot of good feedback on it, and it actually sparked a lot of questions. And people started asking me questions, and they were asking themselves questions about God and what it means to have a relationship. And so I thought it would be great to write this story and tell it kind of in a bigger way, maybe to impact more people than just the people that I meet throughout my life.
Once you got started on the Pop Bead Story, how long of a journey were you on? The writing, publishing, everything?
It only took a year. I mean, I don't know if that's a long time or not. But from the time when I started, I think I wrote the story, and then I contacted Covenant Books, and they accepted the story. And then we went through the whole process of the illustrations, how the story should go, all those kind of details. So I would say it was about a year.
And talking about that publishing process, what did you find the most challenging part about that whole process? There's a lot involved there.
Actually, it seemed it was easier than I thought it would be. And maybe because my book is not very long, it is written for children. So I find that might be easier than writing a novel or something like that. It was actually a very fun experience. It was very rewarding for me because I've always thought about in the back of my mind, how can I get this message out in a different way? So it was kind of exciting to do this and, see it from the very beginning to the end.
And a super important part about this, especially in children's books, are the illustrations. Was that a smooth process as well to get that sort of looking like what you had in your head?
Yes. So I guess when most people hear a story, your imagination automatically starts forming images, and you imagine what the characters look like, what they would be like. The setting of the story, the time frame, was it from long ago? Was it something in the future? And so it was really nice to have the illustrations the way I imagined.
Then that day finally came after all your hard work, and it was your first copy. You got to finally hold the Pop Bead Story. It was a real thing. What was that like, Jessica?
Well, there's a lot of things in life that I think people want to do. And for myself, there are things that I would really like to do, or things that you think, well, that would be nice to do, but it's probably not going to happen. So it was very exciting for this to be something that I thought about, and then now it's something that I did.
Well, this sounds like a book I think a lot of children will love. Again, the title is The Pop Bead Story. It's written by Jessica Estrada-Palma and published by Covenant Books. So you can find it everywhere, really. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Jessica, it's been so nice talking with you tonight. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, too.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.